Hello, this is War on Maps, and this is the new empires video. And yeah, you may notice some little changes here in China. That border was a bit too messy, so I decided to make stuff more logical by just making basically a straight line across China. Everything north would be Japanese, and it starts at this little bay right here. And everything south of it would be Korean. So basically, that's about there. And you may notice from the colors I have here what we're gonna be doing today. And if you guessed this over here, then you are correct. So let's just get started. So yeah, I foreshadowed this last video. I hope you noticed. But before we do that, Russia is just gonna take over 2 more Balkan countries just to increase its influence in the area. But even though Italy already has pretty high influence with like Romania, Croatia, and Bosnia, but still they wanted to compete with Italy because now Russia's biggest rival is Italy. And yeah, and also before that, Italy invades Czechia, and it takes over Czechia, and I do not need to explain this. But now there will be a gigantic war beginning with the USSR invading Italy. But before that, let's just get rid of those awkward little white dots. So the USSR launches the invasion, which pushes into Romania to try and cut it off, and that was successful, getting rid of Italy's access to the Black Sea. After this smaller offensive, taking out the Romanian area coast. But Italy was totally not prepared for this, and and now that they're mobilizing, they managed to send a pretty significant force over here to hold the front line until the mobilized armies got there, and when they got there, they began pushing into Serbia and reestablishing the connection with Romania, along with a near success to regaining the Black Sea coast. And then they also began a offensive in Montenegro, going pretty well. They also did some old stuff and made a landing in Albania. But now the USSR is beginning to increase its conscription, and it's able to push the Italians back in the Romanian coastline, push them out of Montenegro, and nearly push them into the sea in Albania. So, and they also managed to make a small offensive, pushing back the Italians in Serbia. And then the USSR made a special agreement with France for France and the UK, so that in return for getting free oil for a bit of time, they would embargo Italy. And yeah, that's what they did. So now Italy's economy is rumbling, but they managed to stay afloat by increasing their trade out to other places in the world, such as the US, Korea, India, Japan, maybe. So yeah, they increased their trade with those areas. So they managed to stay afloat, but not as well as they would have been if they were able to hold done if they were able to trade with the British and Frankish empires. And speaking of the British and Frankish empires, during this big war, the French and British decided to make an agreement, and they were gonna they decided to partition Germany through the center, and because the British Empire is at the moment stronger than the Frankish, but they made sure that Berlin, which is around here, I think, would be split down the middle between France and Britain to make sure the French got some good stuff out of this. And they did. So they got the eastern portion, the western portion of Germany. I'm just kidding, they didn't get that. They got the eastern portion of Germany, and the British got the western, which, if you don't know, is a lot more developed than the eastern. But the French did get more land, so that's extra for them. And now there's only a little small gap between the European superpowers. So now let's get back to this war. And the Italians, knowing that this war would crumble their economy, began a massive offensive through Albania and following the Greek border so they could escape into friendly territory. But don't follow the Turkish border because they know the Turks at the moment support the USSR for oil, and that's important for countries, so yeah. And yeah, this little enclave of Russia is nearly gone because its coastline is mostly captured. There's only just this little area here, which is in the process of. And it's also nearly disconnected with the Italian offensive. And yeah, that's a big thing here. So yeah, in Montenegro, the Italians are able to push in, and the Italians are only able to do this because Japan is now a major superpower, and they sell Italy weapons for extremely high prices, and Italy takes it. And those weapons are extremely good. The only weapons that are stronger are the British, French, and American ones. So the weapons do play a major role in Italy being able to beat the Soviet Union. So yeah, eventually the entire coast of the enclave is captured, and only a tiny bit of the enclave still remains. So yeah, eventually the Italian forces are gonna squeeze in from all sides and take it out. Then they begin an offensive into the real USSR, and the British and French feel like they probably should be on Italy's good side because they're getting kind of afraid. So they decided to unembargo Italy and began shipping some weapons in return for the French getting Corsica and the British getting Sardinia. And yes, they did do that. So yeah, that's what they did right now. They partitioned those islands in return for getting some weapons. And those weapons seem to be extremely helpful because they're so powerful They literally erased a chunk of this map off the map. So yeah, they must be that powerful. And that's exaggerating because nothing's that powerful. Well, I guess nuclear weapons are that powerful, but I don't use nukes, so no. Those weapons are extremely powerful. They are able to continue the massive offensive into Ukraine and then eventually into Belarus. With continuing progress, they're able to capture Kiev and then push to Minsk and capture it. Then the Italians, using this small strip of former Polish coast there, make a landing in Kaliningrad and take out a major Russian hub for, well, supplying and deploying before they actually head there, and are beginning to take out the Baltic area. And this massive offensive is obviously only possible because of many countries, basically everyone else but the USSR, like Japan, supplying a huge amount of weapons to actually get this started. And also Korea, along with Japan, did it. India also with the US. And then the next best weapons came out with the British and the French, setting to be on the good side of Italy. So yeah, Italy's offensive is working out pretty well. Eventually they reach Crimea, but are not able to push in it because of some weird things in here. It's pretty hard to push it. It's only like a 4-mile corridor. So yeah, they skip Crimea and continue to push around Russia, and they're basically going like Germany in World War II, invading Russia, coming close to Moscow. But failing, they also managed to siege Leningrad. It's not Leningrad anymore, I'm sorry about that. It's actually called St. Petersburg, so they managed to siege it. And then they make a push into the Caucasus, cutting off Crimea and also the rest of the armies in the Caucasus. Then they finally decided they had enough naval superiority, they had enough air superiority, and ground superiority to get this started. They began with air campaigns over it, and then they began their offensive in 2 fronts, only leaving Sevastopol and this little stronghold there. And eventually Sevastopol and that little stronghold falls and Crimea is gone. And now there's a bigger push into Russia, which captures most of St. Petersburg, but not all. And then there's a push from the south, eventually reaching Kazakhstan, and eventually Russia decides it's better to just surrender, and that is what they do. And I will be pausing this video to draw up this peace treaty, so I will see you in a second. Taking a look at this peace treaty, you can see a little bit of change. The British get Afghanistan, though it doesn't look that much different. But the biggest change you can see is Ukraine being released because it wanted to. And yeah, those are the only changes. And I did just see that there is going to be quite a small problem here because of India claiming ports of Japan and Korea. Not going to that well. So yeah, that's probably going to start a major war sometime, but not right now. Because now the major war is going to be the US finally doing a war. And I cannot keep the color just right. I'll just make the color blue. So yeah, the Americans are invading Argentina and begin their push from the north and slow pushes all across the former Argentine border, because these are slower because, well, down here it's already cold, and also there's a mountains. Anybody ever heard of that? Just mountains. So it's slower pushes there. But up north there are stronger forces that do a strategic strategy that advances on one spot but just doesn't do anything in another. And the two spots that advance eventually meet, encircling a force, and then some wipeout divisions take it out. This will be implemented on a huge amount of times during this war, because the Argentine forces are not that able to communicate well, because I think that's true. And then this little panhandle falls to the Americans, except for a small stronghold which bravely holds on just to make an annoying border in the peace treaty. And then the Argentine make a huge military success, taking out the small American advance to Buenos Aires, which gets wiped out. But then the Americans decide to do it in a more strategic way, and what I mean by that is that they wait on that and instead encircle some more Argentine forces, weakening them to make sure it's going to be easier for them to push in on different fronts if they are not able to capture Buenos Aires, and then Argentine forces will be too weak. And then finally there's a break through the mountains in the southern part, which begins to spearhead towards the coast or where Buenos Aires is. Knowing this advantage, the Americans begin their second attack through the coast and push through. Then they push in to capture Buenos Aires, then splitting the Argentina into two, the more useful areas and basically freezing nothingness. So then in the basically freezing nothingness area, the Americans begin invading north to try to take out the smaller encirclement. And they continue, and they are going close to the more useful areas in this huge encirclement, which are already being pushed back from the northern part. So eventually it's just this bay and some surrounding areas. So then eventually there's a big battle where Argentina decides to make a huge offensive, but it doesn't even get any hope of connecting, as there's still a huge amount of American troops to even get through to just connecting. Yet if they do connect, it'll be most likely they'll get encircled. And then the Americans came coming in and eventually even reduce the territory, leaving it just the city, which I don't even know if there's a city there. But yeah, now it's the more useful areas times. And I will cover that up, but just in a briefer fashion. They began advancing from the north and from the south and managed to split it into two encirclements, the more useless encirclement and the more useful encirclement. So the Americans, being Americans, take out the least useful first by just using wipeout divisions from armies to just push in. The second encirclement is pretty big, so the Americans try to split it, but the Argentine force is huge and pushes them back. And also, because the Americans have withdrawn most of their troops at the standoff here, the panhandle for Argentina is fixed, but the Americans now sent some troops to hold the line, and that's just what they do. So now they continue to push in from the north in here, and from the south, east, and west. They just push in from everywhere, eventually capture most of Argentina. And that's when Argentina surrenders. And in the peace treaty, because they like to reduce countries, this is Argentina now. Just a second, I will be back. All right, back. I just had a message delivered to me, and yeah, I just am going to make Argentina get annexed by the US, and that is not a surprise. Except Argentina is not fully annexed because the US was not able to occupy all of Argentina. So some of Argentina is still Argentina, most notably and that little bit of Argentina is the little panhandle. So basically everything else is now American, but this little panhandle, which refused to surrender, and there have been many like takeovers and pushbacks in here and there will be for a very long time. So I will not be covering all of it. It's just this little strip of Argentina refused to surrender. So the Americans are still going to be at war. And that will be the end of this video. I will continue this series the next one, or maybe the one after that, if whenever I feel like it. And yeah, just to wrap everything up, major things that happened in this video are, well, Italy beating the USSR with help from basically every nation. The China being actually split well. The US invasion of Argentina, with this little strip of Argentina refusing to surrender and continues to push into the rest of Argentina with hopes of trying to reclaim Argentina for itself. And it continues to try and fail, and there will be many new treaties signed every single time, usually with one side getting land and the other side losing some. So yeah, this will be going back and forth a lot. And this will be the end of this video. I hope I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.